What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video, top 5 league winners for the 2019 fantasy football season. And for this video, we're going to be going over the late rounds of the draft. I'm sure you've heard other analysts talk about late round picks with upside, but to be honest, most of them like to play it safe. They'll talk about the late rounds, be like, yeah, these are great picks going in the late rounds, but then they bring up guys in the list that are going in the middle rounds, and that's not what we're doing here. At least at the time this video is being released, all of these picks are going in the 12th round or later, with a few of the picks going the 13th, the 14th, and then undrafted. So no, these are not safe picks. There's really no such thing as a safe pick late in drafts, because that's not what we're shooting for. We're shooting for pure upside in the late rounds of the draft. You need to be absolutely comfortable dropping your late round picks in week 3 when there's a stud on free agency, because there always is. Every single year there are studs on free agency in the first month of the draft. So you shoot for upside with your late round picks. If it doesn't work out, you drop them. You're good to go with that. But every single person on this list is going late in drafts and can absolutely be a league winner this season. Also, I didn't want to include the cop-out of including like a late quarterback and Dallas Goedert, right? It'd be super easy to make the list if I just threw together some running backs, said late quarterback, Dallas Goedert, end of the day. But there are a million quarterbacks going late. You guys know that you should just be drafting late quarterbacks. I shouldn't have to tell you that. There are a billion quarterbacks going late, so I don't want to waste a spot on that. And then everyone knows that Dallas Goedert's going to be a league winner if Ertz goes down. That's the easiest pick in the world, so I'm not going to put that on there. I wanted for this video to talk about some people that maybe you're not thinking about. So if you enjoy this list, then be sure to leave a like. And if you hate the list, then I'm sure you'll let me know in the comment section down below. But let's start things off with the stat of the day. Yesterday's answer was the New York Jets, and the winner was Quintavious Bundridge. Today's stat: among undrafted wide receivers in their first 3 years in the league, who had the most targets in a single season? So in their first 3 years in the league, what undrafted wide receiver had the most targets in a single season? All right, let's start talking about some league winners. And the first guy is Tre'Quan Smith, going in the 14th round. I think most people have assumed that Ted Ginn is going to be the team's number 2 wide receiver, but the dude just turned 34 years old, and he's never in his career been over 790 yards. Tre'Quan Smith was a 3rd round pick last season and boasts an 82nd percentile height adjusted speed score, an 85th percentile agility score, and an 86th percentile breakout age. He also showed what he's capable of last season with 2 separate top 5 wide receiver performances. He had 3 for 111 and 2 touchdowns in week 5, and then 10 receptions for 157 yards and a touchdown in week 10. And those aren't performances we should be counting on, every week going forward, but they highlight what he can do in this offense. He also caught 28 of 31 catchable targets, which gave him the 8th highest true catch rate according to playerprofiler.com. I expect him to see an expanded role this season, and it would not shock me at all if he was the team's full-time wide receiver 2 across from Michael Thomas. And that comes with massive upside in the 14th round for a wide receiver on one of the most dangerous offenses in the league. So I absolutely sign off on Tre'Quan Smith in the late rounds. Next guy is Chase Edmonds, going in the 13th round, and Edmonds is honestly an unbelievably good pick this season, no matter what you think of David Johnson. We know the Cardinals are going to run an air raid attack, but we also know they're just going to run a bunch of plays. And last season, David Johnson led the league in the percent of team carries inside the 20, inside the 10, and inside the 5, including 100% of the Cardinals carries inside the 5-yard line. David Johnson is very likely to dominate the season as long as he stays healthy, but everyone has a chance to get hurt. And if DJ were to go down, then Chase Edmonds becomes a running back 1, and he showed last season that he's a capable running back and he's decent in the receiving game. You will not be able to use him on a good team while David Johnson is healthy, but you shouldn't expect to use your 13 round pick right out of the gate, right? I mean, that's not something you should have to do. So just think about how much upside this guy comes with, and you can dump him. Like, he's probably going to score 2 and 3 points in weeks 1 and 2. Like, that's honestly the likely outcome. So if you see a great waiver wire pick, this is who you drop. But know that if David Johnson goes down, you just you are in the playoffs, essentially. Like, if David Johnson were to get hurt and you have Chase Edmonds, you probably just made the playoffs, because That's how good your team's going to be as long as you were just okay with all the rest of your picks in the draft. So having a pick with that much upside in the 13th round, you got to do it. Next running back on the list, and actually the last running back on this list, is Damien Harris, currently going in the late 12th to early 13th round. And I think people have an irrational fear of the Patriots' backfield. Over the last 3 seasons, the backfield has produced 3 league winners. 2016, LeGarrette Blount scoring 18 touchdowns as a 9th round pick. 2017, Dion Lewis finished as the running back 10 from week 5 on as a 14th round pick. That's insane value. And last season, James White finished as the running back 9 as a 9th round pick. All of those guys helped carry people into their championship, and that's each of the past 3 seasons. And if you think about it, the top running back from New England hasn't been the top scoring one for fantasy. In 2016, Blount was the 2nd New England running back drafted. 2017, Dion Lewis was the 3rd drafted. And last season, James White was also the 3rd drafted running back. So you don't have to look at this and be like, oh, well, I guess Sonny Michel is going to dominate. No, it's been the opposite of that. Whoever the first guy is, avoid. I mean, honestly, the trend has been that's not the guy who's going to produce. This season, Damien Harris is the 3rd running back drafted in New England. All reports out of camp have been positive for Harris. So although we obviously need to take that with a grain of salt, and until it's proven otherwise, this is Sonny Michel's backfield, that could change once camp starts, and that could change if he suffers another injury. Remember, Sonny Michel has the 2nd highest odds of suffering an injury among all running backs this season. He suffered a torn ACL, he's broken his shoulder blade, he sprained his ankle 3 times, he's fractured his forearm, he suffered 3 separate knee strains. The dude cannot stay healthy, and the Patriots spent an early round pick on Damien Harris. James White capitalized on all the injuries last season. Well, Harris has a chance to do that this season. It's always a good idea to just take the cheapest running back when the situation's ambiguous. When we don't know who the lead guy is going to be at the end of the season, just take the cheapest one that you think could be. And since we don't know exactly where the points are going to come from in New England, but that we know that there are going to be points, why not take the guy who's virtually free? So I love him as a pick. Next guy is someone I really like, is Donte Moncrief, going in the 12th round. And I am just not a fan of James Washington. I've brought that up a few times this season. I don't think you could possibly draft him. He was just bad. He was just bad last season, extremely inefficient, and proven that he's just not going to command a large target share. Well, Antonio Brown and Jesse James are gone. They're leaving behind 207 targets from last season. And you can't just give all those to Juju. Juju already had 166 targets last year. So I'm not saying that Donte Moncrief is an elite wide receiver, because he's not, but he actually finished 13th last season in percent of teams' air yards. 13th, you heard that correctly. Among all players, he was 13th in percent of team air yards. He had a larger percent than Brandon Cooks, Jarvis Landry, Michael Thomas, Keenan Allen, Juju, and T.Y. Hilton. And I understand it was the Jaguars, but he commanded a lot of air yards. And get this, he was 11th in yards after the catch above expectation. Donte Moncrief did these 2 things. His final stat line, 48, 668, and 3, and that's with Blake Bortles and Cody Kessler as his quarterbacks. And now we see all the reports coming out of camp back kind of what we would think would happen. I mean, since we don't think James Washington's all that good, and Moncrief's not elite, but he's definitely better than James Washington, and he did really well last season. The reports out of camp, Big Ben's talking him up, the wide receiver coach talking him up. I mean, every single report has been overly positive. And I mean, beat writers are saying he's a lock to be the number 2, a lock. Can we always believe beat writers? Absolutely not. But I tend to believe beat writers when they're backed up by what the coaches say, and they're backed up for what I think the team should do. So we've got a massive target share to fill on a high volume passing offense. And we've got a guy who commanded a large share of his team's air yards and produced after the catch. Like, obviously the floor is low because this is Donte Moncrief after all, but the ceiling's massive. And his median projection, what I have right now for his projection, which you can get at our draft kit, thefantasyfootballadvice.com, 55 receptions, 691 yards, and 5.8 touchdowns. Now, that's not going to win you anything, right? That's just going to be fine, but that's a median outcome. I mean, he absolutely has the upside to see 70 plus receptions. And if he does that in this offense, then he's going to finish as a wide receiver 2. I'll take that upside every single time in the 12th round. Because in the 12th round, this is basically like your last wide receiver you're taking. You've got to go for that upside. The last wide receiver on this list is not being drafted anywhere, and his name is Josh Gordon. There have been 2 wide receivers ever to post over 2,400 receiving yards before their age 23 season, while averaging 17 or more yards per reception. Their names are Randy Moss and Joshua Gordon. Josh Gordon averaged 74 receiving yards per game over his career, including 40 receptions for 720 yards and 3 touchdowns in his 11 games with the Patriots last season. Brady also averaged 11.3 yards per attempt when targeting Josh Gordon last season. That was his most yards per attempt ever to any player in his career, and Tom Brady has not exactly had a short career. Gordon was Pro Football Focus's 17th rated wide receiver in the games he played for the Patriots last season, and his wide receiver grade was significantly higher than Julian Edelman. He's shown that he's still an elite wide receiver, gaining 90 yards or a touchdown in half of his games last season, including 70 or a touchdown in 2/3 of his games, while maintaining 18 yards per reception, which was second to only Deshaun Jackson. His pace with the Patriots last season was 58 receptions, 1,050 yards, and 4.5 touchdowns. That's not going to win leagues, but remember, that's on pace to finish as a wide receiver 2. And that was after being traded coming off of injury. He had a bum hamstring for a decent portion of last season. He's been working out with Brady in the offseason, and there's an opening spot for the outside wide receiver and red zone threat in this offense. The risk is obvious. Yes, there's plenty of risk, and his suspension is still unknown. But realistically, reports have come out that Tyreek Hill is going to face like 6 to 8 games. And while I don't believe these reports have that much behind them, it would not shock me in the slightest if the league just slaps a 6-game suspension on. But the thing is, they can't possibly screw this up. There's no way Josh Gordon gets less games than Tyreek Hill. The public outrage alone, it doesn't even matter what you think. The public outrage alone will keep his suspension less than Tyreek Hill. And if the reports are true, that it's 6 to 8 games, I mean, what are we going to expect from Josh Gordon? Like 4 games? I mean, he could even be reinstated with no suspension. I think that's probably unlikely. But there's just no way he gets more games than Tyreek Hill. And so if we have a guy who's going to face, in my opinion, a maximum of 4 games going undrafted with opportunity available in New England, and we already saw he still got it. He was still a great wide receiver last season. Remember what I just said. Tom Brady had his best yards per attempt of his career when targeting Josh Gordon. He maintained the 2nd highest yards per reception in the league. His pace was a wide receiver 2, and he's free. Could you end up not using him for a single game? Absolutely. Absolutely. But I don't care. The upside makes it worth it, and as soon as we find out that he's, say, suspended for the whole season, as soon as we find these things out, you drop him and you pick up the Hawkeye on waiver wire, because there are plenty of them at the beginning of the season, and we're going to know his suspension before the season even starts. But if it comes out it's only like 2 games, this dude's going to climb, so you've got to take him now. Also, think about it this way. They have more information than we do. The Patriots organization absolutely have at least a guess as to what his suspension could be. And he's working out with Tom Brady. I mean, what do you think's going to happen? Do you think that Tom Brady's just going to work out with the guy if he's going to be suspended for the whole year? No, they're expecting him back. So those are some players going in the final rounds of drafts that could absolutely win your league. And I want to remind you guys that guess what? Our draft package is now available. Get my rankings, my projections, and so much more at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. But that's the end of this video. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, make sure to leave a like. And how about subscribing if you're new? But thanks for watching.